Greetings, adventurers. My name is Kramer, and I have been thinking over the past week or so, pretty much nonstop, about what LARP really is, to me at least, what my expectations are as a player, and kind of what I think LARP should be, or what I would like it to be, ideally. This is a candleside chat. I have my candle. We're burning the mythology candles, ranger scented candle here, and this is really an open discussion, because I'd love to read through all the comments and see what other people's thoughts and experiences are, what other people, why do you LARP? Right? Why do we do this thing known as live action role playing? Pretty much going to be stream of consciousness. I have some things written down just to keep me on track. And I'm hoping that by sitting down and working through some of these questions with you, that I will be able to continue my journey of trying to find the ideal, perfect game for me. Something that gives me everything that I'm looking for. And in order to do that, I kind of have to identify what that is first. And the TLDR, the too long didn't read, since I am filming this before you are actually seeing it, is that for me, I think LARP is an experience more than it is an event or a game. Like, it is technically an event, but we won't get sidetracked in the semantics. So let's start at the very beginning. I discovered LARP, the live action role playing, when I was a freshman in high school. Pretty much by chance, I just stumbled upon some videos on YouTube about it, and then I went to my friend and said, hey, have you ever heard of LARPing? You want to go? And then we were able to get to our first event that very month. And then I quite diligently attempted to attend that LARP that I went to, which is Night Realms in Sparta, New Jersey, if you're interested. I tried to attend that event as often as I could, which pretty much amounted to 3 to 4 months out of every year during the summer, in between the school years. And then I had to take a step back from that once college started, because I moved away and I didn't have a car at the time, and so yada yada, things just got complicated. But even when I was in college, I was always decorating my room with all my various LARP swords, hanging them up on the wall, and it always remained a passion of mine, an interest of mine. I would like read through the rule books that I found online just because I enjoyed doing that, and it helped me feel connected with my chosen hobby, even when I wasn't able to actually do it. And I remember my sophomore year in college, I had this whole plan for how I was going to try to make my room into like this Viking longhouse with weapons on the walls and, like, you know, furs on the floor and like a nice table in the center, because that's what I wanted to come home to. I never quite managed to do that, but the intention was still there. And then fast forward to today, I've since graduated, of course, so I have a lot more time. I've discovered the Middle-earth Ranger Reenactment Society, which is super, super cool. And now I also have this YouTube channel, which I started in 2020, which brings me back around to this very broad, general question, which may not even have an answer, or at least it would have many different types of answers. But what really is LARP? Well, a lot of us know, probably most of us know, and if you don't, that's fine, that LARP stands for live action role playing. It's essentially D&D for the most part, but you are playing your character in real life in a real physical space. And there are lots of different kinds, but given that I tend to focus on medieval and medieval fantasy, and I like fighting with swords, that is generally the type of event that I look for. But generally speaking, with a little bit of imagination and creativity, I am able to role play in live action, in my costume, with my swords, by myself. I can imagine any number of orcs charging at me as I make myself a hero and I fight them all. I can look at a hill and imagine that there's a castle on it. I can build a little set for myself in the comfort of my own home and just relax and enjoy the medieval aesthetic there. And I've advocated that other people do that too, because it's honestly a lot of fun. I think I have one video on that. It probably deserves another video at least. But that being said, that obviously isn't enough. Otherwise, I wouldn't be going to other LARP events, because I could just stay home, or I could read a book or play a video game. But none of those things really fulfill that need that I have to go to a LARP event. So in that case, while I can LARP on my own and have fun doing that, that clearly isn't filling that void. So what else is there? Well, LARPs can have varying amounts of attendees that go. And even if I'm just like with my group of friends, there's 5 to 7 of us generally, and we're just camping in the woods, there's no story, there's no plot, there's no magic, there's no combat. I'm the only person in garb, and I still have fun with that in that small group. It's not a LARP at all, and yet that does fulfill that wanderlust in me. So I think that camaraderie and friendship and a community of like minds is also very important to having a good experience at a game. But I'll add a caveat that I have also gone to LARP events where other people were there, or Renaissance fairs where there's obviously other people, but I've gone alone and had a perfectly good time. In fact, the year before I started this channel, in 2019, I went to the Maryland Renaissance Festival 3 times. 2 times were with a group of friends, And then the latter time was pretty much just like an impulse buy. I decided I'm going to go again. So I just bought the ticket that night, and then I drove there the next day, and I had pretty much, I think, the best time that I've ever had at an event like that. And I was just completely alone. There were other people around me, and I had fun interacting with them, but I was able to. And I don't mean that to sort of offend anyone that I've ever gone to a fair or a LARP with. What I'm saying is that I was able to carve out my own little space where I could just sit under a tree on a bench writing in a leather notebook, and I had my own little way to interact with that world, and that was enough. So I think that last thing that I hit on is actually maybe the most important thing, and that is the world, the physical space that you are playing in. The world of the LARP has to transport me into this new space, this different place other than where it is that we normally live. And sometimes that space is magical and it's filled with wonder and adventure, and other times it just has this quiet freedom from modernity. And I suppose that escapism is a very mundane way of putting that, but I suppose to some level it's completely accurate. I think we'll come back to the world thing, but there are other things that contribute to a LARP, to a game that can either detract from or add to the immersion or the experience. But the more that I think about it, the more I feel like I'm willing to sort of overlook things like mechanics or rule systems that I don't personally like, as long as the world is able to draw me in. And I suppose that's a very similar feeling to, you know, when you're acting, to have an actual set behind you rather than acting on a green screen. It makes doing the job a lot easier when everything around you is real and you're not just having to imagine it. So, you know, real quickly, is it the rules that help contribute to a LARP that would be ideal for me? Is it the mechanics? Is it the lore? Well, I mean, I like combat as much as the next guy. I like combat systems that are simple. I like it when armor matters. I don't like having to call out and shout how much damage I'm doing every time I hit some person. I don't like having to do a large amount of math in order to figure out whether or not I'm dead. And yet I think I'm at a place now where I would rather have that, rather have combat rules that I dislike and have a world that I lose myself in, than not really have a world that increases my immersion and just have fun fighting. Because, you know, having fun fighting is great, but that's essentially sparring practice, and that can happen anywhere, and I can do it for free. So while we're talking about all of this, my ideal combat system, I think, would be a system where roleplay is heavily encouraged, where the players are all acting as if their weapons have actual weight, and it's a very collaborative process where even if you're fighting someone, both of you are working together to collaboratively make a really cool and cinematic fight, rather than just sort of swinging as fast as everybody can to try to win. But that takes a little bit of training, but I tend to think that fights need a little bit of space and a little bit of breathing room in order to be the most fun. That's just what would be the most fun for me. And in terms of magic, the Witcher LARP, which I really wanted to go to, and I'm very sad that it is no longer running, they had like actual special effects and stuff, kind of like you would probably have at the Universal Harry Potter thing, where if you did a spell, there would be like a physical reaction in the world, and it makes the player feel more engaged, like they're actually doing something. And I'm sure that's expensive to pull off, but that is really, really cool. Okay, maybe it's the lore. Is the lore of the game something that's super important? Well, yes, I think to a degree. Lore is great. Is that the most important thing? I'm not sure. Investing myself in the written story and tying myself to the world is very important for me in order to have a good experience. But again, the experience will pull me in whether or not I find the lore interesting if the experience is good. If the lore is there, but the experience doesn't pull me in, I'm not sure that that's enough to actually maintain a game. I think that location and atmosphere and tone, these at times metaphysical aspects to the game, are ultimately the most important thing. And I say that because Emotions are such a strange thing, right? We can't really quantify them. A lot of times we can't really explain why we're having them, or sometimes even control them. So that makes emotions a very powerful thing to harness if you are an artist. If you're a storyteller, harnessing the emotions of your audience is a very poignant way of getting to them and bringing them in. So if the set, right, if the game world that you're physically playing in has the ability to pull emotions from you or create emotions, then that, I think, is how you get an amazing experience. So for example, I went to Evermore Park in Utah last year in 2022, and while it wasn't a LARP, it is a park. It's essentially a fantasy-themed Renaissance festival, and there are characters all dressed up, and the costumes were all very, very great. And that all adds to the experience. But this place was dedicated to this one event. It had custom buildings that were built and highly interactive sets and props and all of that stuff. And you sort of just walk through that front gate and you were immediately encouraged to sort of let the cloak of modernity fall off of your shoulders, and you're just in this new place now the second that you walk through that gate. And even though I wasn't in character, I mean, I was in costume, there was just not really a need for me to be in character, that still fulfilled my wanderlust, being in this completely new and explorable space. So then it is the location that is partly the most important thing for me. And I think it's sort of at the top of my list. But as I'm continuing to unpack this, it's not just the location, it's also the things within the location. The set, for lack of a better word, as I'm injecting my theater terminology into this. And I don't necessarily mean, when I say highly interactive, I don't necessarily mean it has a ton of quests or a ton of NPCs that are constantly engaging you. I mean, that's all fun, that's good. But I think what I mean rather is that there are small details and there are small props here and there, right? Like if you say had a desk, that's one layer. And then inside the desk, if the drawers actually had stuff inside of them, that's another layer. And then furthermore, if the stuff inside of those drawers was also interactable, if there was like, you know, you pick up a scroll and it actually has writing on it and it's not just like a blank piece of paper to look at, like, and look cool, if everything in it is there are just these tiny little levels that compound into reinforcing the idea that this place is real and the people that live there are real and you are in this new world. It's a little bit like the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings, at least in the movies. A lot of the time you don't think about how the hobbits are much shorter than the rest of the people. It's not always in the shot, and yet they're constantly reminding you here and there with these trick shots where you don't even really know. Like they explain it in the appendices. You know how they did the trick, but your brain still doesn't process it, and they're showing you again and again and again, hey, just remember that the hobbits are like this tall, and your brain just starts to believe it, and then it fades into the background, and then occasionally they'll remind you again. I think that's what world building needs to do when you are at a LARP. That's what's going to make a good experience. And as a player, I am of course able to suspend my disbelief a little bit, and I think players are expected, not unreasonably, in some cases to do that. Like if you hear or see a car or a plane go by, you can just sort of turn that off and ignore it. And yet I love when the experience has been created with such care and attention to detail where I don't have to do that. And I suppose on some level that's sort of like the quiet freedom from modernity that I'm referring to, is that the pressure and the impetus to immerse myself has been taken off of me and instead been put onto the game, where the game is actively immersing me and the responsibility to immerse myself has been taken on by the game runners. And I'm going to this experience, I'm paying for a ticket so that I have that ability to just sort of go in and bask in this new world rather than having to like manufacture it myself or something. You see, I love the feeling of just standing there and thinking, there's no way that people actually created this. The amount of time and passion and love and resources that must have gone into creating what I'm experiencing right now must have been so great, like my brain can't even fathom it, and yet I'm looking at it, I'm witnessing it, it's here in front of me, that it's pretty much impossible. And right after that moment is when I really lose myself and become immersed, when the environment and the costumes or whatever have simply been created with so much care that my brain simply has to accept that this world is real because there's no other option. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that that is the same feeling that I get when I watch the Lord of the Rings films, and that's what I look for. Like my running joke here on the channel is that Peter Jackson just took a camera into Middle-earth, and the greatest conspiracy cover-up of all time is that they then went back and manufactured an entire compendium of behind-the-scenes footage to hide the fact that Middle-earth is actually real. But so to get back on track and give an example of what I mean by having the world be real, right? There's always that little part of your brain that you have to keep on that goes, I'm a player, I have to separate myself from the character that I'm playing, otherwise you get character bleed, and that's when things can start to get a little messy. But if say something sad happens in a game, right? And I pretend that my character is crying because it's what my character would do. I choose to cry in that moment because it fits the story, that's fine. That's role-playing, technically. But if the world and the characters within it are so real and so believable that it pulls that emotion from me and I actually cry, you know, that is a very different and I think would be a very beautiful thing. Again, you have to separate yourself from that a little bit and remember not to like actually start freaking out, but there is that fine line that I think a world can pull from you where you are feeling something, even though you know it's not real, it is real. And I say that would be amazing and beautiful because I'm not sure that I've actually quite experienced that yet. And while we're on the subject of immersion, I think it's important for me to clarify what I mean by that, because realism and immersion, at least for me, are very, very different things. And I will give an example. So one LARP that I've been to has this really awesome tavern set essentially built on the property. And so that's one level. They actually have a tavern built. And then the second layer is that it's actually decorated with like sconces and stuff you can interact with inside the set. It's got the tables and all the feastware and all that. And it's all in there. There's a bar in the back. Like that's the second level. And then the third level is that there are actually speakers hidden throughout the tavern area that play fantasy medieval tavern music in it during the event. And now, is that realistic? No, of course it's not. It's not realistic that music is coming from no discernible source. There's no one actually playing an instrument. There shouldn't be music in that case, so it's not realistic. And as a player, of course, I can go, oh, there's speakers, and appreciate that amount of dedication has gone into it. But it actually increases my immersion to such a degree that it overrides that portion of my brain that goes, there's speakers here, and instead my brain sort of subconsciously and seamlessly just works that music into my experience and brings it up another level. And it works to maintain, ironically, it works to maintain the illusion of this magical world existing. So whereas not having that music would probably be fine, it would be more realistic, right, to not have music that's not coming from a real source, I'd rather have it than not, because it creates and sets the right atmosphere and the right tone. And it also happens to make me feel like the main character of a movie while I'm walking through the tavern, which is always good. I keep thinking back to this very excellent show that I got to see my senior year of college. And I think show is probably the wrong word. I think experience is much more the right word. Because it's unlike anything that I've ever seen before, and that was a show called Sleep No More in New York City. What didn't take place in a theater. An entire 7-story building had been completely set up like a 1920s hotel and speakeasy. For the most part, that's what the decoration was. And the entire play happened in this full building. In addition to the normal hotel, there was also like an entire forest and a graveyard complete with like dirt all over the floor. And there was a huge apothecary with like a bigger than the room that I'm in now, just stuffed full of stuff that a witch would need for various potions and stuff. And the entire play just happened in this one building. You walk in the door and like that's the experience, and you can do pretty much whatever you want. You could try to follow as many of the actors as you could as they went between rooms and between levels, and you would never see the full story. The point was not to see the full story. The point was to have this highly immersive interactive experience where you only get snippets here and there. And you could be following this one group of actors and then see someone over there going to do something and go, that person looks interesting, I'm going to go see what they're up to. Or you could just explore. You didn't even have to engage with the story at all. You could just walk around. This place, I kid you not, this place was so detailed and so immersive. You could go, buy a ticket, walk into the room that was a library, pick up a book off the shelf, sit down in the nice leather chair, pour yourself some whiskey from the decanter that was sitting right there. Because again, you can touch anything, you can move anything. And then you could just read that book for 6 hours until the show was over. Because all of the books were real. They weren't props, they were real. They were actually put there with words in them. And mind you, it was someone's job to reset this entire building at the end of every night so that they could do the show again the next day. That's crazy. And if you were really lucky, you would get pulled aside for what were essentially called one-on-ones. And you kind of have to go in order to know what it is that I'm talking about. But there were essentially these scripted events where there would be some minimal level of audience interaction. And I got 3 of those. And one of them, they actually had me take off my mask. The audience members were expected to wear masks so that we would know who the audience members and who the cast were. We weren't allowed to talk because that would have been very confusing and disruptive probably for the play. But there was one-on-one that I had where I got to take off my mask and the actress was asking me questions and I got to play a character for a little bit. It was a really cool moment. I had 3 of those moments. It was awesome. And the only other rule here was that there were stagehands hidden throughout the entire space, the entire building. You never saw them. And the only thing they were there to do was monitor everything to make sure you weren't going to do anything dangerous and accidentally hurt yourself. And they would quietly come and pull you aside if you were about to interrupt a scene. And aside from that, you never knew that they were there. And this wasn't even a LARP. And yet it has come the closest to the type of LARP experience that I would like to have, like I think pretty much ever. And I'm sure the logistics of it would be absolutely insane, but it's clearly doable because Sleep No More did it. Like, if you're still having trouble picturing it, think of a game like Escape the Room or something, where you're in this space, it's an entire set, everything is interactive, you can touch whatever you want, things mean different things, but instead of just a tiny room that you're trying to escape, it's a 7-story building. That's just so awesome. And so for me, LARP really is about that experience. It's about being in this new world. I don't even necessarily like the 1920s that much. If this place had been a medieval setting, oh my gosh, right? But that's what I'm saying, that the experience pulled me in even if the lore didn't really, because the experience was so good. And perhaps it's because of my acting background, but to me, LARPing really is, it's a show. And I'm one of the actors playing one of the characters, or I am one of the players, right? If we were to be using Shakespeare's terminology, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, I'm a player. And all of the other players are doing that same thing. We're all acting our characters, and everyone is simultaneously both actor and audience. And I think looking at it through that light, which is probably what a lot of people do, it makes perfect sense that I want to have a set and props, because that makes my job easier. It makes it much easier for me to play that character when everything else is there and real. It helps me lose myself in the reality of that moment, always having that little piece so that I don't have full character bleed, but it helps me lose myself in the reality of that moment so that I can just be a person interacting with other people. We're all different people than we normally are, but we can all do that naturally rather than having to like force it. So what do you guys think? Do you think my ideal LARP is feasible? Do you think I'm preaching to the choir? Do most people think about LARP this way? Am I not like breaking new ground at all? I'm just very curious to see what everyone has to say, get information and new viewpoints from the community here as we continue moving forward. I will see you very soon. In the meantime, I'd like to wish you good luck on your adventures.